A partir de este 10 de enero, ellos van a responder el llamado al heroísmo en las nuevas temporadas de Chicago Fire, Chicago Med,
¿Qué tenemos?
y Chicago PD,
Encuéntralo.
solo por Universal.
Behind the scenes, what we do is we try and have a lot of fun and take away from the tension, because we know what from the moment they shout action, tension, especially during an accident scene. And we have a wonderful makeup artist called Chris Payne, who does all our emergency stuff. And I know when I watch the TV show, sometimes I see what he's created and it makes me wince in my chair, and I'm in my living room and it's coming. So, so basically at the end of the day, we will ignore that wound and the actor who's got the wound on them is having fun. We're having fun with them. And then the moment they shout action, everybody goes into a place and into a mode. And it's like a clock coming together. And then the moment they shout cut, we start laughing and joking and taking away from the tension that we created for that moment. So it's wonderful that we can do that. I think some directors are shocked that we can do that.
No, we never ever dreamed it would go on this long. We thought we were going to just do a pilot in 13 episodes and be done. And here we are 10 years later, still portraying this incredible fire service that is the Chicago Fire Department. And I think we try to do right by them and show that these guys really are heroes that run into places that rats and roaches run out of. And our guys, when the threat is that way and everyone's running that way, and you'll see this in a couple of weeks with Bowden's episode. We have a episode that primarily focuses on Bowden. He runs towards the threat, and that's why I think people tune in, and they tune in for 10 years, because we're not just one show. Like, we're not just a soap opera or a drama or a comedy show. We have within an hour, within a scene, we have, action, suspense, romance, drama, thriller, all the genres, which makes it really fun to write. And then we get to work with the best actors in the business, and hands down. And so it's beyond my wildest dreams, but when you look at the team that we have assembled together, it seems like it's natural.
Mm-hmm. Fire has been like a huge deal throughout humanity. There's myths about Prometheus, and also nowadays in modern times, when we have a lot of engineering, mechanics, and electronics, we couldn't, handle fire yet. So what do you think that it's so appealing to humanity, fire? For whoever wants to answer that.
Well, I mean, I'll let Andrea jump in too, but I do think from the very beginning of humanity, it provided light and it provided warmth, which was the two things that human beings gravitate towards and need in their lives. But at the same time, it was dangerous. And so then the fact that you can take this element that, when raging out of control, and an army of people can't contain it, but yet we try, and we try to control it, and we have people whose jobs are to protect others and save people from it. And that was the appeal to me. Andrea, what do you think on that?
Well, I think what's really interesting, and one of the reasons we've had so many arson stories, is arsonists are really compelling characters. And one of the reasons is they're obsessed with fire, and that obsession really takes over. And there's something about fire, like Derek said, the power you have when you're holding it in your hand. It's not just, I can light this, like little kids will light one little thing on fire, but these arsonists, you start a fire in a forest, say, and you can wipe out millions of acres. Like, it's an incredible amount of power that they hold in their hand when they hold that fire. So I think it's very compelling for that reason.
That's a great question. It's actually one of the reasons that one of the main reasons why I love working on the show. And I got to give Dick Wolf a tremendous amount of credit, because seven years ago, he called me up and he said, I'm doing this hospital show spinoff, and there's a role for a psychiatrist in it. And he said, there's never been a psychiatrist in a show like this. And there's a reason for that. But I think the world is ready. And you know what? He was absolutely right. What he meant was that people weren't ready to talk about mental health issues, but that he intuited that the public now, because if you look at even the great hospital shows of even the last 20 years, no psychiatrists, you know, and so it's a real privilege to be able to, and I think really incredibly important to tell stories that destigmatize mental health. Yes, you know, given the age that we're living in, and just in general. So I really appreciate the question, and it's one of the things that keeps me around. You know, is the fact that we do that.
This is for both of you. When you portray a character for a lot of seasons, you know your character by heart. So what happens when you receive a script, for example, that doesn't specify or doesn't say exactly what the character would say in a specific situation, because you know the character you've been playing the character for a lot of years?
Oliver?
You want to start with that one, hon?
I can. You know, I think I understand what I've lived up to this point, but it's life, you know, it's an evolution. It's a discovery of a human being. And I think sequentially, every time a story is brought, you discover it at fresh, you know. I don't think that I'm the same person that I was when I started working on this show, and I'm definitely being influenced by the wonderful people that I'm working with. So I think I would say that the character grows as more story is put before them. And if the stories are sequentially making sense, you're watching the blossoming of a life that is being discovered by the artist and by you. And Andy and Diane, I don't know if you know, there are showrunners, the ones that write and build a team around the writing of the entire show. They do an exceptional job at I would say, putting a landscape of all these characters and how they're influencing each other. So I don't get bored. And I don't think you can get bored in a situation like that, because the algorithm of the stories are always changing. So you're always discovering.
But, you know, I have actually a very specific answer to your question, though, which I also really appreciate, which is that, you know, our writing staff is very collaborative. And so, you know, when something comes along like that, and it does, because they're trying to tell new stories, it's incredibly difficult, you know, and they're often the ambition of the stories can collide with, you know, you have to, every now and then something comes along where they, in order to make the story work, they maybe have your character doing or saying something that they wouldn't. And then what you do is you call them up and you talk about it and you work it out. And so we're very lucky to work in an environment like that, because, you know, actors hate saying, it's kind of a cliche, like, you know, my character wouldn't do that. So, yeah, no, we're very lucky that we're working in an environment where we can address that stuff directly. But it's a good question, because it does happen. First thing that comes to mind is I always, what I love about it is I learn a lot. You know what I mean? But one of the interesting things about the show is that we're often, especially Dr. Charles, involved with stories that involve sort of medical ethics, right? And very often, you know, I'm brought in on a case where the doctors are frustrated because they can't get the patients to do what they want to do. But the truth is what they want them to do. But the truth is like, people have a choice, you know, and people have to want to be treated. And so very often it can be really frustrating. It's somebody like with that twins case, you know, it was bizarre to the extent that they wanted to remain the same. And if one got the operation, the other did. But and you know, there's definitely some sort of mental health issue going on there. But still, as long as people have capacity and they know what they're doing, you can't, you know, you have to throw up your hands in a way and kind of accept it. And sometimes that can be upsetting, you know. But that's the way it is in in the old US of A in terms of this, self-determination, free country, right?
I think I agree with everything Oliver said. It's you're dealing with their free will and their decision-making process. When you go to a hospital, you definitely have a right of refusal. You don't have to take the care that they give you. You have a right of refusal unless you are able to cause harm to yourself or to another. You have a right of refusal. So in most situations when I am watching whatever story we're living with, I always approach every story with they could refuse. And then from the moment they accept, it's a journey that we are collaboratively going to live. So afterwards, I think that you take on the experience as an artist who's living something as a new knowledge for my character, a new knowledge of understanding what you have seen people react and how they have reacted. And then we work as an ensemble to make sure that all the stories are accurately portrayed, not necessarily portrayed the way you would want to, but according to the story.
I'll tell you, first of all, crossovers, I don't know if you've noticed, they've kind of gotten less and less. To schedule a television show with one episode of one TV show is not easy. So when you have 2 or 3 trying to schedule it and the actors, it's near impossible. With the COVID protocols that we have in place, that's what stopped. It's just become too complicated. There are occasional visitations, but they're not real crossovers. Like, each show also has its own kind of atmosphere and ways of doing things. And they're like families. And, all families are different. And, but these are extended families because we're all kind of part of the same family, but different branches.
This really, honestly, as boring as this may sound, the scheduling is really the hardest. When we start a new episode, we have something called a one-liner and a day out of days, which is hard to read if you don't understand it, but it's almost like a backward schedule of what of the days and scenes that you're working. And if I needed to be on Med, let's say, they would send that to Med and say, these are the times available that you can have Marina. But let's say they have a location, like a very big location that they can only have the time that they can have Marina, and Marina can't be on it that time. So it's really a tricky dance that is not our job. I think probably production hates crossovers. We have a great time. It's really fun, but they probably hate it.
It has been around for almost 8 years, more than 8 years. So how's Chicago, the city, changed throughout all these years and 3 presidents?
3 presidents, that's right. Wow. Man. Chicago is the lead of our show. It's Chicago PD. It's a cop show, but it's a Chicago PD. And she's a temperamental diva. And the reason she's a diva is she deserves to be a diva. She's a remarkable place with faults, but all in all, it's a wonderful city that is continuing to change and evolve. And it's got an amazing history and I think an amazing future. Chicago is the reason we're here, and that's why I say she's the lead of the show. This is all about Chicago, and that's it. Like the rest of the characters in the show, she's changing and evolving. Sometimes it's hard to see, but if you're here, you can feel it and smell it.
Things that I think is important to, I spoke to a lot of female police officers when I started this job, but for my character, at least, I find it very important to not be afraid to be soft. I think that sometimes we can play these superheroes, and especially women, I find it's characters that, you know, sometimes I audition for things in hiatus, and a lot of the women that I audition for are just sort of hard edge. And I feel that you can be a strong woman, and you can have a lot of strength and also have softness and tenderness to you. You don't have to be sort of a wall. And I think Kim is very emotional and tender, and lets cases influence her a lot. And I'm proud that people think that she's strong and sees that, and that I don't have to sort of, put my fists up for people to see that I can just, her character can exist and they know her strength. Even surviving a gunshot, and going home every night to a daughter and building it's not just about the work, it's about being a mom and an example to her daughter too.
A partir de este 10 de enero, ellos van a responder el llamado al heroísmo en las nuevas temporadas de Chicago Fire, Chicago Med,
¿Qué tenemos?
y Chicago PD,
Encuéntralo.
solo por Universal.